Welcome to the Sisters in Service podcast. My name is Kat Corchado, also known as the voice connecting women veterans nationwide. This podcast is for anyone connected with the military, from veterans, male and female, military spouses, military brats, even parents who may have children who are in the military. As an Air Force veteran, I understand the trials and triumphs that women veterans go through in service and out of service. And so I wanted to find a way that I could put it out there into the airwaves and let everyone know what we're going through and find a way and a solution to what's happening to us in the service. I also like to highlight these women who are business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're bosses in their business. And so I hope that you will follow me, you will share, and you will subscribe to this podcast, which comes out every week on Tuesdays. And as always, please stay safe, take care of each other. Until next time, and it's never too late to start your impossible. The Sisters in Service podcast is brought to you by Small Space Pilates. Are you ready to get fit and fabulous from the comfort of your own home? Look no further than Small Space Pilates. With live online Pilates and weight training classes, a video library, and a no perfection allowed policy, you can achieve your fitness goals without ever leaving your house. Visit smallspacepilates.com for your complimentary session and start your journey to feeling fabulous today. Good morning, Sisters in Service. Welcome to our latest podcast episode. I am Kat Corchado, and today we're going to be talking about menopause. Now, my guest today is not and has not been a member of the military. However, as women, we all eventually will go through menopause. So we're going to speak a little bit about different aspects of it, what the usual things that doctors tell us that we need to do. Sometimes they just tell us we're getting old and just deal with it. Yeah, that sucks, I know. But and we're going to find out from our guest how she found her own way. So here we go. My guest today is Rachel Lankester. She's the founder of Magnificent Midlife, which is an online hub celebrating and empowering women 40 plus. She's the author of The Magnificent Midlife, Transform Your Middle Years, Menopause and Beyond. And she's also the host of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's like you hear that, yeah, she's in another country, y'all.
I'm on the other side of the pond.
Yes, she's on the other side. Rachel, I think this is such an important conversation to have. But first of all, tell me why all of this was so important to you. What was it that you went through that you said, this is crazy, I need to find something for me?
So when I was 41, I was given a diagnosis of early menopause. Now, looking back with everything that I've learned since then, I don't think that diagnosis was right. But because I was given it, I was sent off on a particular path. And I found out because I was trying for a much wanted second child with my new partner. And sadly, I didn't get the baby that I dreamt of having. But I was having the test done because he had a reverse vasectomy. But he'd had a vasectomy. Sorry, let's get it the right way around. He'd had the vasectomy. He was willing to consider having a reverse vasectomy. Bless him.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Pretty cool, man. I'm still with him 17 years later. And I thought that I ought to go and get my hormones checked before he went under the knife. So it was a massive shock. I hadn't had any symptoms. I hadn't even realized that maybe my periods had gone a bit askew. No awareness of anything. I was literally just going along, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Yes, everything would be fine. He could go and have the snip or the unsnip. And so I had this diagnosis, and the lack of medical knowledge then was woeful. And it's sometimes not that much better now, but it was terrible then. And literally, I was told that I had the hormone profile of a postmenopausal woman. I would have no chance of conceiving a child. Here's a prescription for HRT made from pregnant mare's urine. Off you go. And that was it. And I was 41. And what happened was that I had bought into all the negative narratives about menopause.
Yes.
What little I knew about menopause, I didn't know very much, but it was for old women. It meant that I was past my sell-by date. It meant that meaningful life...
Expire by.
Exactly. I was near to expiration date. And as time went on, I realized that this was absolutely rubbish. It was ridiculous. But these are the messages that we're given throughout life. And just think of the size of the anti-aging market, which is something like $67 billion in 2022-23. We are drip fed the message that, you know, we do reach a certain age and then it's all downhill from then. And for me, menopause that seemed to be the epitome of that age. That seemed to be the pinnacle of my meaningful life. And what happened was I went away. So I am a natural resource investigator and I don't like to accept anything. And I thought, this doesn't make sense.
That's why we like each other.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, no, that's not right.
What's going on? What's going on? And I hooked up with an organization called the Daisy Network, which looks after women who have gone through early menopause. And I went to one of their conferences very shortly after my diagnosis. And I was connected with a nutritionist there called Dr. Marilyn Glenville. And I went to see her and she said, no promises, but if you do what I suggest, we may be able to reverse this. So I thought, yeah, I'll do that. So she put me on a really strict diet. No caffeine, no sugar, no alcohol, everything organic. All my personal products were to be as natural or organic as possible. Even my cleaning products, you know, to try and strip away all potential toxins in my immediate environment. And within 5 weeks, I had a bleed. And that was just amazing to me. Oh, the other thing was that I was to eat at regular intervals so that my blood sugar level was relatively constant.
Yes, it didn't drop or spike.
Exactly. So because we put our bodies under a lot of stress by making it spike and drop. Mm-hmm. So I had a bleed. I went back. I had another hormone test. And the doctor was as confused as me and said, you're back to being premenopausal. I think, you know, you may have a chance of having a child, so he can go and get the reverse vasectomy and off you go again. So he did have the reverse. It didn't work. We didn't get the baby, but I birthed the book. I think of the book as my baby.
Right.
And I have learnt so much about how much impact we can have on our own hormonal health. And I think that is why there's many prongs to what I do now. But one is that I don't want women to have to flounder like I did. I don't want women to think they're past it because they've reached menopause, because they're not. I don't want them to see menopause as something terrible, because it's not. And actually life beyond it is brilliant. The period of going through menopause may be difficult for some women.
Yes.
It may be a breeze. We don't know. Every woman has a very different experience, but life beyond it, for most women, is pretty good. And I wanted women to have all the information about how, you know, what's available out there, what help is there, what do women need to know? Because the more we know, the less we fear. The more we know, the more informed we are to take responsibility for our own...
We can make better decisions.
Exactly. We can make better decisions. We can take responsibility for our own menopause transition. And that puts you in a position of power rather than being a victim of it. And I think that is really important. So that's really why I do what I do.
Do you think that the onset of perimenopause or being menopausal, that, or even some women who go into, like you did, early menopause, and not because they had a hysterectomy or anything, is because of these external factors, but also these internal factors. And what I mean by internal is what we put in our body. External is what everything is out there in the air and all this other stuff. Do you think it's a combination of both?
I think we need more research on this. And because nobody makes money out of doing this kind of research doesn't get done. But anecdotally, from my personal experience and from what I see and hear from other women, is I absolutely believe that there is a cost to modern life, that there are things in our environment which can impact our hormones. We know that there are things like parabens that have been found in breast tissue when biopsies have been done for breast cancer. So we know that these things get into our bodies and that they stay in our bodies. And we're not exactly sure what they do, but it sounds a bit suspicious to me. I think there's evidence that if your mum had an early menopause, you're likely to have an early menopause, or your sister did. Then there is a genetic aspect to what time it's going to happen. There's no correlation with how good or bad it might be relative to your female relatives. So there's that. But, I've read things like air pollution can impact the time at which you go through menopause. And I have always lived in highly polluted places all my life. So that, again, makes sense to me. But I would say that I think I was given this definitive diagnosis of having gone through menopause. But we now know, and I know, that one of the reasons why doctors do not test for menopause unless you are below 40 is because your hormones can fluctuate so much on a daily basis. When you're going through perimenopause, you can present with one profile on one day and one profile on the next day. And the doctor, who told me my diagnosis clearly didn't know that, hadn't got a clue. And, I could have gone off on a completely different route. And I might even have got my fertility back fully. I have interviewed someone on my podcast who I used to work with when I worked in corporate. She was a designer, and she has retrained as an acupuncturist. And she was told that she'd gone through early menopause, no chance of conceiving a child. She went and had some acupuncture. She conceived a child, had a baby, and retrained because it had such a massive impact on her. She wanted, obviously, other women to know these things and to have the possibility of finding a solution. And so sometimes doctors can be really definitive about things, whereas actually it's much grayer than that. It's not black or white. It's, modeled, and there's all sorts of things in there. But yes, I think there are many, many things that impact our hormones. For example, I think of myself as the pill generation. I couldn't wait to go on the pill as soon as it was legal for me to do it without my mum knowing.
Yes.
and I was on it for a long time.
I was too.
And who knows whether that impacted, the diagnosis I was given. Obviously, my body was doing something weird, because while I managed to reverse it for a time, it was only about 9 months. And then my body went back to being postmenopausal. So from the age of, 43, I was definitively having gone through menopause. So it was still very early.
What do you think of doctors? Because I'm one of those women that I always look for a female doctor, because I don't think, and nothing against male doctors, okay, just nothing, but it's my preference. When a doctor says, oh, I know, and you say, when you ask about, or when they ask you about symptoms, you say, oh, well, my breasts are tender. Like, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, how do you know what I mean? You don't have any. So even with menopause, I think, if this was a guy issue, I think this would have been done and over with. Like, they would have said, oh, here's a cure. Here you go. But for women, they're like, well, you're just getting older, or it's just a part of life. And it's like, okay, fine, but there's got to be something to make it a little bit easier. like when you get pregnant, you have a baby, you can choose to have natural childbirth or you could choose to have drugs. I want something that's going to make it a little bit easier. So do you think that part of it is because no one talks about menopause? Like my mother didn't talk to me about menopause. So you're in the dark about it. Doctors don't want to talk to you about menopause because they don't know. And so you're left out there in the wind. Do you think it's a combination of all of those why we're still so in the dark about menopause?
I think it's definitely a combination of all of those. But I think it's also really interesting because we can't talk about anything other than menopause over in the UK at the moment. It's gone crazy. The last
Really?
2 to 3 years, there were a couple of documentaries done by somebody called Davina McCall on menopause, and those have raised awareness exponentially. So there's a very different approach to menopause in the UK to what you've got in the US. And what I'm seeing and what concerns me greatly is that sometimes the UK is being held up as a good example because we're talking about it. But where I am really quite different from a lot of people in the UK is that I don't believe that what we're saying in the UK is the right thing. What we've got now in the UK is a climate of fear. And it is going back to some of the themes that we had in the 1960s that came out of the US. Robert A. Wilson in 1966 wrote a book called Feminine Forever, where he was pushing that all women had to have hormone therapy to keep them nice and succulent, juicy and pretty for their menfolk.
God, that's
Yes,
awful.
yes. Go and find this book. You can get it. You can still get it. It's a very old copy. You have to buy it secondhand, but it's an obscene book actually, and it was found out that it was financed by the drug companies. And the man's book tour and everything, it was all financed by the drug companies who were making the hormone therapy. Then hormone therapy, subsequently, people loved it. Then there was a research done. Everybody got very scared about it. And now we've gone back to it being okay, but I think the US hasn't quite caught up with that yet. They're still very scared in the US about HRT. And HRT, or what you call it, menopause hormone therapy. I think we call it hormone replacement therapy, which isn't
we call
really
it that
correct.
here too. HRT,
Okay.
yeah.
But what it's become in the UK is that people are pushing it again. They are really pushing it. And it's almost got to the stage where women are frightened if they're not taking it. So it's very, very different. And I think somehow we need to get to a happy medium. And the happy medium is that for many women, hormone therapy will be very, very helpful. But they don't need it forever.
Right.
And they don't need it to protect them from all manner of diseases that come in later life, because it's getting older that brings those diseases, not just menopause.
Right.
So that's another narrative that's going on over here, that we have to have hormone therapy, we have to have it for life to save us from osteoporosis, heart disease, diabetes, depression, even early death.
Don't you think it's a combination of, because I take hormone replacement therapy. I just do. I went to a doctor and they were like, oh, they wanted to give me that horse urine. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. But I was so miserable. I mean, I was so incredibly, I couldn't, I would be talking to you and all of a sudden you would look at me and go, are you okay? I would be wiping sweat like this, like I was a faucet. And so that was a good option for me. But don't you feel as though it's what you eat, it's what you drink, it's what you do. It's a full circle. It's not just do the hormone therapy and then you're good to go. It's everything that's involved with that. Would you agree with that statement?
I think it's super, super important, because you can take the HRT and pretend you haven't got to sort the other things out. But they're only going to come and kick you in the butt in the future, you know.
Yes.
I'm an interesting case study in and of myself, because I did go on HRT from about 44 to 51. So 51 is average age of menopause. And when I was told to go on the menopause, I was told to have it as a protection for my bones and heart, because I had gone through menopause earlier than was the average. So, but I was always told, come off it at average menopause age, because then you would normally be going through menopause. So that's kind of the okay time to come off it. And I always planned to do that. But because of what I do and what I've learned, is I had put in place many things to enable me to transition off the hormone therapy. I've always had this idea that unless I absolutely have to take a drug, I don't like to take it. It's just something about me. It's not to say HRT is bad. It's not bad at all. I went on it, but I had always planned to come off it. And I took my inspiration from what the dietitian had previously told me. So I started with my diet, and I haven't had any caffeine since then. So it's 17 years now I've had no caffeine. And I love not being,
caffeine.
I know, but I love not being dependent on caffeine.
Yes.
I used to drink. I have actually stopped drinking now since June last year. I haven't had any alcohol. I can't give up the chocolate, but I can try and go darker. I was going to say,
if you give up chocolate, I'm like, I can't talk to you anymore.
But the interesting thing for me was, as soon as I came off the HRT, I had a couple of hot flashes. I know in America you call them flashes, not flushes, which I think is better, because I like the idea of a flash rather than a flush. There's a very different concept. Flash is much more exciting. I had a couple of those. And what caused them? Chocolate and alcohol. So I knew immediately that it was those two things that had caused the hot flash. And when I was drinking, and I was closer to menopause than I am now, then if I drank of an evening, I would wake up in a
sweat. With a hot flash. Wow.
Yeah, I would wake up with a hot flash. So I was like my own guinea pig. I could monitor myself and see what was causing these things. So I actually, may sound a bit puritanical, I don't know, but I see menopause symptoms as the canary in the coal mine. I think it's the body's way of telling us that things need to change. And we can either deal with them, or, as I said, they'll come back to bite us in the bum eventually. But
I like the way you think about that it's, because I don't mind getting older, but all the symptoms and stuff were just crazy. But I have a question for you. When I was told at one point that you're going through perimenopause, which you haven't quite stopped your cycle, and you have it sometimes, but you don't sometimes. Is there any regulation as far as that? What is the sign that a woman might say, maybe I'm perimenopausal? Is it the fact that they went a month or two without their cycle, or are there other indications?
Signs.
Yeah, other signs.
I think one of the first ones is that your cycles may become a bit irregular. You may have been regular as clockwork. And if it starts to get a bit irregular, then that's an early sign of being in perimenopause. Another early sign that often goes missed is anxiety. A lot of women get anxious as we go through the menopause transition. And if we knew that, we could go, oh, all right, I'm a bit anxious because my hormones are a bit all over the shop. And if you think about premenstrual tension, you think about, anxiety perhaps during pregnancy or in postpartum, it's not that crazy to imagine that as our hormones are changing all over the place and fluctuating quite wildly sometimes during perimenopause, that we may also suffer with anxiety. But what happens is that because we don't know that, we get more anxious because we're worried. Why are we anxious?
Right.
Or maybe I'm getting rid of brain fog and I can't remember things, and things that were previously easy for me to do, I now can't do as well. So what's going on? Have I got early onset dementia? And then that adds to the anxiety. So,
yes.
part
so it's
of
like a roller coaster effect.
Exactly.
It's like, you start going on this.
So part of my passion is to increase the education, is to let women know what to expect so that they can be prepared and not scared. That's I think the key thing. The more knowledge we have about what is likely to happen, the better we can understand it. Because so many women, it comes as such a shock. I mean, it did to me. I didn't expect to be told I'd gone through menopause at 41.
Right.
But actually, the whole of our 40s can be a period of hormonal change.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have someone who is listening to this podcast when it does air, and they might be perimenopausal, because that's kind of the first thing that you might think. Oh, am I pregnant? And then you're like, okay, no, it's been 2 months and I'm not pregnant. So, but they get this fear of, oh my gosh. Okay. Because then you get this, where do I go for information? How do I, where do you go? What would you say to those women who are on the cusp of perimenopause or might even be perimenopausal, but they don't know where to go? Where would they go to get information?
Well, this is going to be a horrible self-promo thing, but just get my book. Get my book. Seriously. Because I wrote it because there was nothing out there on the market that said what I wanted this book to say. Because often it's very clinical, it's very medicalized,
yes.
and it's like puberty in reverse. It doesn't have to be medicalized. For some women, it's very difficult. It might come because of you might have early menopause because of surgery or cancer treatment. And then, of course, it needs to be medicalized. But for most women, it doesn't need to be, although, drugs can obviously help. But so my website, I have so much information. I have another magazine site as well. I'll put a link to that in the show notes maybe. But I have lots and lots of information. And I have just, with a group of 11 other women, set up a new organization. And we've called it Menoclarity. So you can go to menoclarity.com. Yes, because there is so much misinformation out there. This whole deficiency narrative that has taken off in the UK, we're not having it, because me as a 56-year-old woman, don't tell me I'm deficient. I'm not
How
deficient. How dare you? How very dare you? Actually, I'm like, whoa.
But it just, really, I think it's absurd that we get to this point of life. We've gone through so many highs and lows. We've gotten to this point in our life. And I am an information junkie.
Me too.
So when something, I grab onto something, I'm like, let me look up this information. I'm like, oh, take black cohosh. Oh, take this. I was taking so many different supplements. I probably spent thousands of dollars, just on supplements. And there's nowhere to go to ask these questions. And so when you said you were going through this early menopause, or what you thought was early menopause, and for those listeners that are out there that are really liking the fact that maybe they can change their diet, what kinds of things did you omit? I know you said coffee, you said alcohol. What kind of foods did you omit out of your
anything that's processed?
diet?
Processed food is really not good for us. Yeah. So if it's got loads of ingredients in it and you can't identify those ingredients, it doesn't deserve to be in your body.
Or you can't pronounce the ingredients.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's frankenfood. It's not real food. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So get rid of that. And I'm not saying get rid of these things forever. So menopause is a sensitive time in a woman's life, like puberty, like childbirth, pregnancy. It's a sensitive time. So you may only need to strip back these things during the transition, and then you might be able to embrace all the processed food later, although hopefully you'll have gone off it by then, because it's really not good for you anyway. But processed food, sugar, try and strip sugar out. Only have natural sugar in fruit and things like that. If you can, chocolate, take it darker so it's not got so much sugar in it again.
And there's some good dark chocolate out there, y'all.
There's good dark chocolate.
Yes.
But also
Cadbury's being one, just saying.
Absolutely. We compared notes last time we spoke, didn't we? Because you're a Cadbury's girl.
I'm a Cadbury's girl. Yes,
I remember that. Definitely. No Hershey's around here. Sorry, Americans.
No. Sorry, Hershey's. But not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. I go for Cadbury every time. But also that so try and go organic, because there are so many pesticides and antibiotics in our food chain, and we don't realize this, but we are taking these things in. Dairy milk is another thing that you might want to avoid. That was something else that I was told to avoid way back when I was consulting the dietitian. So dairy milk I cut out. I still have dairy, but I don't drink dairy milk. I have soy milk. And I really recommend that every woman over the age of 45 has ground flax seeds every single day. They are such a good source of phytoestrogens. They are the most dense source of natural phytoestrogens. And phytoestrogens are thought to mimic what estrogen does in the body. And flax seeds are also really good because they're full of omega-3 oil, I think, as well. They're just generally a superfood. You have to grind them. Don't have them as whole seeds. Otherwise, they go straight through you and they keep you regular, but don't do much else. But that's an added bonus. They also keep you regular. So, I've never been so regular in my life since I started having the flax seeds every day.
Well, thank you for sharing. So
it's a triple whammy. Triple whammy. It's brilliant.
Well, I remember years ago, I was listening to, I think it was a documentary, and they were talking about potato chips and how they put something in the chips that as soon as it hits your tongue, that it does something to your system that makes you keep eating. It keeps, and you keep eating it, MSG, and you can't stop. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I mean, when did we become these human guinea pigs, so to speak? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying, or what you're trying to say, is not to panic, to figure out, so if I'm sitting here and I'm panicking, I'm going through perimenopause.
That's going to make it all worse. No panicking.
Right.
No panicking allowed.
Oh my God, I'm going through this. So start looking at my diet, maybe taking out one thing at a time. Is that what you're saying would be a good plan?
Yes. Exercise is also massive.
Yes.
Exercise reduces stress. Stress impacts on hot flashes. So exercise has been proven to to reduce the intensity and the frequency of hot flashes. Even CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because women feel this shame about hot flashes, which really is ridiculous, because men don't feel shame about losing their hair, do they? And yet we feel shame about these things because we've been taught that, our value is all wrapped up in being young and beautiful and fertile, and we don't associate beauty with older women, which I'm also trying to change, because I think beauty is ageless and all ages are beautiful.
Yes.
But because we've had all of these messages, we sort of wrap it all into menopause, and then it just makes it worse and just makes us more anxious and no panicking.
I think it doesn't help that we hear about all the anti-aging, anti-wrinkle, young
Drives
is
me
in,
nuts.
and this other stuff. I was in a meeting in Clubhouse, and we were having this discussion about how women look at aging, and the hair's graying, the wrinkles and everything. And I said something that was rather shocking, but what it was is that I thought maybe the graying of the hair, the wrinkling of the skin is Mother Nature's way of saying, hey, your looks are fading, but it's time for you to discover your other gifts. You have more to give than just face and body. There are other gifts that you have that you haven't discovered. What do you think of that comment?
I think that's very powerful. And I think the more we can approach and embrace our inner beauty, the better. But I would disagree with you a little bit on that, because I think that grey and white hair and wrinkles can be very beautiful.
Oh, I didn't say it wasn't.
Yeah.
I've seen women with some gray, and I'm like, if I could have gray hair that looks like that, what I'm saying is that a lot of women wrap up their feelings of how they feel about themselves in their looks.
Yes.
And when it starts to fade,
well, it's not fading. You see, it's changing.
Okay. It's changed. That's a good word. It's changed, but they tend to think it's fading.
Like I know,
you're almost going
into
invisibility, like you're not seen anymore. So I love that word. But when, they feel like their looks are changing, that they now have to act a certain way, do certain things. Like they can't be vibrant anymore. And I think that's such a wrong message to send.
Yeah. But we've been drip fed it all our lives.
Yes.
I did a video on TikTok, and I asked people when they had first discovered that aging was bad. And I said, maybe it was, in your 20s or your 30s, or maybe you were really lucky and it wasn't until your 40s. I had so many comments on that video. I had women saying it was when I was a teenager. There was one woman who said it was when I was 5. I saw an advert on the television for a skin cream that would knock 5 years off my age. And I imagined myself disappearing completely.
Oh, that's so sad.
Isn't that sad?
That's so sad.
But, I used to buy all the anti-wrinkle stuff. I bought every cream I could get my hands on until I hit early menopause, actually.
Then you just get to a point where you're like,
no, I'm not doing this anymore. It doesn't work. The only thing that works is sun cream. So what's the point? What's the
exactly.
point? And I think the more we can build up older women, the more we can acknowledge older women for their power and their value and their beauty. This is why I want to reframe menopause, you see, because I think menopause is the time when women start to feel ageism. And we put a lot of it down to menopause, but actually it's gendered ageism.
Yes.
It's the way society looks at older women, which is at fault. And we don't, as a society, value older women. It's a particularly Anglo-Saxon thing, actually, which I've written about in my book. So it's the British culture, American culture, Canadian, New Zealand and Australia. Those countries are particularly ageist about women. When you look at Catholic countries in Europe, older women have more status in their society than women do in our Anglo-Saxon cultures, which I found fascinating. And I think I've written about it, and it all goes back to Protestantism and the work ethic and the fact that your value was tied into your ability to work. So men worked, they had value. Women didn't work so much because they didn't have so much value. Right. And then, of course, as we all get older, we don't work so much. So as we get older, we lose that sense of society's value, and women have the double whammy again.
Well, I think you're right. You get to a certain age, whatever it is, because I'm going to be 66 this year, and I think my value should have double and triple by now.
Yes, absolutely.
But that doesn't happen here. They're like, oh, you're, even in getting jobs and stuff, the ageism
it's terrible.
Is
it's
huge
terrible.
here. But I wanted to ask a question about those women that really said, you know what, I don't have time for this. I'm in full menopause. I just need all of this hot flashes, all of this stuff to stop, and they decide to go with hormone replacement therapy. What kind of tips can you give them when they are researching of where to go to get this done?
Make sure you've got somebody who knows their stuff, because a lot of doctors just do not know their stuff. I would say don't go for the pregnant mare's urine, honestly. Go for the ones that are made with yams. They are the ones that you most find, certainly here in the UK. But I'm shocked sometimes to hear women who are still being prescribed Premarin, which is the mare's urine one.
I actually got some and I threw it away. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not taking it. It was brand new. I just threw it. I was like, nope.
And for me, the concept that that mares are kept pregnant just so they can provide urine to keep women feeling better in menopause just doesn't sit comfortably with me.
I don't like that either.
No,
I don't like that either.
So the yam-based ones, I think, are very, very good now. That's what I had. And I think by just, if it's too much, it's really not worth struggling. So yes, go and get the HRT, but put in place everything else as well, because otherwise you'll come off the HRT and you may well find you're going through menopause.
Right.
When
and
you
I think
come
it's
off it,
something that, when I first got mine, I went to one place and I talked to them. I went to several places, but I went back to this one place 2 or 3 times. I said, I just need to get clear, what it is. And finally I said, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I feel better or I don't feel better. And so I've been perfectly happy with it. So whatever women decide, for those of you listening, whatever you decide, it's a personal choice.
Totally.
Just don't stand still and be scared. Ask the question. So Rachel, where can we find your book?
You can get the ebook or audiobook from me at magnificentmidlife.com/book. And the audiobook is narrated by me. So if you like this dulcet British accent, you can listen to me narrating my book. Or you can get the paperback at any online bookstore. The fastest is Amazon.
So if someone's listening to this podcast, but they've got questions, if they have questions, can they reach you somewhere where they can ask the question?
Absolutely. They can send me an email at rachel@magnificentmidlife.com.
That'll be in the show notes too, so I'll make sure that's in there. I feel as though this could be such a much, much longer conversation. We could just go down several rabbit holes.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what I've gotten through this is don't be alone in this. You don't have to be alone. Find out as much information as you can on your own. Start talking to other women, finding out, just what did they do? How did they get past it? Because you're going to go through it. I don't care if you're a female, you're going through this at some point in life. But I just wanted to thank Rachel Lankester for coming on and for talking about this, because we may have to have a longer conversation, like a part 2. But for anyone listening, what I'm going to say. Please stay safe. Take care of each other. Until next time. And remember, it's never too late to start your impossible.